welcome to this episode of Ranger Touring. Today I'm going to be going through another iteration of my favourite tracks. This video I'm going to be breaking it down in terms of where the tracks are, how difficult they are, the recommended modifications to complete the track, and then things to do whilst you're on the way. Before I get started, I just want to touch on a few things. To navigate around Australia or find these tracks, I've been using a few different things. Firstly, if you're new to four-wheel driving, this is a great start. It'll provide you a few different tracks all around Australia that you can go to, and it'll provide you a play-by-play of exactly what to expect along the track and the difficulty associated with it. It's a really good planning guide. Cost me 50 bucks, highly recommend it. Secondly, I use the HEMA Atlas as a basic guide to navigate with and also find some cool spots around my area. For navigating on the day, I'm planning my trip in a bit more detail. I'll use the HEMA HX1. This is a really good unit in terms of the maps that it provides. However, I will caveat that by saying the software associated with the unit itself is not the greatest. It can be a little laggy and slow, but in essence, what you buy it for, if you're buying it for play-by-play, it is the perfect thing for you. I also use Wiki Camps because it doesn't just provide camps, it provides points of interest and day use areas, and it'll tell you in the comments if people have left a review what to expect along the way. That's a really great tool to use, and for $8 for a lifetime of it, it's fantastic. Finally, the last thing that I do a lot of research online. I'll check out YouTube videos and just general Google search to see tracks around my area, and then I'll do further research to find out exactly how difficult they are, which is pretty much leading into what this video is about. I like doing this for my trips, and I hope these videos help you out plan yours. So in no particular order, the first track is Basin Track. Basin Track is located in the Wangaratta region of the Victorian High Country. The track itself leads to Top Crossing Hut, which is also one of my favourite camps in my latest iteration of that video. The track is fantastic. It's a perfect high country track, starting up rather high and then working your way down to the valley where you'll find Top Crossing Hut. There's 2 water crossings along the way and plenty of Victorian high country steep hills. Even a little bit of mud to play around with as well. I rate this track as a medium difficulty, and that's only due to the fact that again the water crossings can be semi-deep, and there is a few spots where you do need to pick a line just due to the ruts and the hills, etc. Also, if you catch bad weather, this track could become a lot more difficult, so just keep that in mind. So what are the recommendations for this track? Look, I'd say to you, a good set of tyres would definitely not go astray. Obviously you need to be able to drop them down to a decent pressure as well, noting how the terrain in the high country. You're going to need a low range gearbox for this place. It's slow driving, you're definitely not rocketing around the place. There is 2 water crossings, however I don't think they justify the need for a snorkel. None of them would have come up more than probably 600 mil, so which is generally speaking not higher than the wading depth for most vehicles. Alright, things to do along the way, obviously just the track itself is fantastic and provides some excellent views. But once you get to the bottom, you've got Top Crossing Hut, and then you've got some fishing opportunities right at the bottom of it. Okay, so the next spot is within Cape York as a whole. Cape Flattery is about an hour and a half to 2 hours north of Hopevale, a little bit further north than Cooktown as well. Okay, so I'll describe to you a bit of the track. Drive along gravel road for a little bit, and then first off, to sort of kick straight into the serious part of the track, there's a decent sized water crossing, which has got quite black water, so you definitely can't tell whether there's any crocodiles in it. However, this is where I'd recommend dropping your tyres down, probably to at least 18 to 16 PSI. From there, you go through the first crossing, a lot more sand, some rudder tracks, and then you end up on a hill climb for a little bit, back into the water with another deeper crossing, which is even closer to the coast, so even more chance of you finding a crocodile in it. So just be careful with those crossings. From there, you find yourself on an infamous hill climb. You might have seen it before, it's a massive climb on one side, but if you're coming up from the beach, it's way worse. We had a bit of a disaster here, where we ended up getting stuck with about 4,500 just couldn't make it up. To be fair, the sun was beaming down that day, 35 degrees, and the sand was so soft you could barely stand it. This track does lead down to Connie Bay, and there is a lot more driving to do. We didn't get a chance, but hopefully 2024. Okay, what difficulty would I say this is? I would say it is a difficult track. Especially when you get that hot day, soft sand just becomes that much worse to cross. And as well as that too, you've got some pretty serious water crossings. We did tow along here, and I know people have towed up the track before. However, I would recommend probably don't do it if you can avoid it. I would recommend leaving your trailer potentially at Elam Beach, and then doing either an overnight or a day trip out, because it's a pretty rough drive up that hill with a trailer. You might end up like us. Okay, what I recommend getting this to get this track done? I would definitely recommend a lift to keep your body out of the sand. I'd recommend a good set of tyres and drop them low. If you have a decently powerful car, that's going to come in handy. I don't think you need to mod your car to make it more powerful, but it's just a consideration. I would recommend a snorkel because the crossings are quite deep, and I would recommend a full suite of recovery gear, being some max tracks and probably a snatch strap or two. So what is there to do once you get on the other side? You end up on the east coast of Queensland, and it's just spectacular beaches along the way up. You can go through a bridge and end up in Connie Bay. I do need to mention that to stay at Connie Bay, you do need the Indigenous landowner's permission, which you can find either online or in the HEMA book. It also tells you what the phone number is. So the next track is the Haddon's Corner track. The Haddon's Corner track goes off Araby Road and then heads west towards Haddon's Corner. Haddon's Corner is the marker that divides the northeastern corner of South Australia and Queensland. So the track itself is only really short. It probably took us, even with the trailer, on maybe 20 minutes as a detour. We already had our tyres dropped down to about 25 PSI driving on the dirt roads, so we didn't really drop our tyres any further, and we were comfortably able to tow the camper trailer across. There's only two real difficult parts. You get up two dunes. The first one isn't too bad, and the second one not too bad as well. When you're coming back, however, it's quite a steep drive up the second dune, and you do need to give it a bit of right foot. But again, we didn't drop our tyres down any further than when we were driving on the roads, and I was towing the trailer, which was probably coming in at about 1.6 to 1.7 tonne at the time. How difficult would I say the track is? If you're not towing, I'd say it's a pretty easy track, and I would comfortably recommend any vehicle to go up it as long as it's a four-wheel drive. So the recommended mods for going out and tackling the Haddon's Corner track, I would just say that make sure your car is in a reliable state, as you are quite a long way away from everything else, and as well as that too, just a good set of tyres, because they do get chewed up out that far into the outback, and therefore if you don't have a good set of tyres, you might not even make it there to tackle the track. Things to do whilst you're on the track, or once you get to the end of it, there's a small picnic area. We had lunch there for the day. It was covered in flies though as well, so it's probably wouldn't want to hang around there for too long, but it's a great little side track and well worth the stop. So the next track is not exactly a specific track itself, however all the tracks in the Kenilworth area. Kenilworth is located about 2 to 2.5 hours north of Brisbane, and the spots you want to be looking for are the Imbil State Forest, also Conondale National Park. They kind of make up the Kenilworth tracks. So what should you expect when you head out towards Kenilworth? It's really hard to find specific maps on good tracks around the area, so you do need to sort of just head out into the State Forest or along Balloomba Creek Road and head from there, and you'll just find tracks spearing off. A lot of the Kenilworth tracks are a bit of a closely guarded secret, and I think that does have to do with the fact that a lot of the tracks are closing down. So a lot of the four-wheel drive enthusiasts in that area don't want a lot of people driving through there, so it doesn't get shut down. They do range in difficulty, but you can expect very narrow tracks with lots of lantana on the sides. You can expect some good rocky climbs and undulating sections. You can expect some water crossings and a whole lot of mud. That's probably the biggest one that you do need to be prepared for when you head out there. But depending on where you head, you can avoid most of that stuff. So what difficulty would I say it is? I'd say it ranges from easy all the way through to very difficult. If you just head along Balloomba Creek Road and drive through Conondale National Park, nice and easy drive and you'll be fine. However, if you head off some of those skirting tracks, you can find yourself in a fair bit of mud. And I would say that those tracks can be very difficult, and there's some you just wouldn't even attempt in the area with the standard four-wheel drive. So what are the recommendations for heading out to Kenilworth? So to be best prepared for everything, now as I've said, there is easy tracks out there, but to be best prepared, I would suggest that you need a good set of tyres, a good lift kit, a snorkel, because there is some water crossings here and there, and then I would also recommend some bar work, and finally to really top it off, you need a full suite of recovery gear, and I would say that should be inclusive of a winch. If you're like us and you get stuck on a massive downpour and you really can't go back to where you came, then a winch is going to be the most essential piece of equipment. So what is there to do whilst you're out in Kenilworth? Well, there's the bakery firstly, which is definitely worth a stop, and then there's also really good camping and swimming holes around there, plus a mountain of four-wheel drive tracks to go with. So the last track that I'm going to recommend for this is the Moreton Island Inland Tracks. Now I would say Fraser Island has the better coastal tracks, However, Moreton Island dominates when it comes to the inland tracks in terms of their fun. Fraser Island obviously has a lot more, but Moreton Island's tracks have a lot softer sand, and generally speaking, I found them a lot more enjoyable to drive. So the main one I'm talking about is Middle Road. Middle Road is an inland track. It's the main one, and it's one way. And obviously if you get stuck behind people, then it can be a slow drive. Or if you have the fun of getting to tow someone up the hill, that's also really enjoyable. So how difficult are the inland tracks? I would say that they're a medium difficulty, just due to the fact that the sand is quite soft and there is pretty big ruts cut out through the centre. So I did find having a bit of a lift kit was beneficial to myself. I would say though, if you're expecting to tow on Moreton Island, you're going to have a pretty rough time on some of those roads. You definitely have to get some momentum up, but the problem is, again, because it's a single lane, if someone stops in front of you and you need to restart, you're not going to be moving. So I would recommend dropping your tyres as low as possible and then trying to stay out of peak season so you're not stuck behind people. What would my recommendations be in terms of modifications? Firstly, again, a good set of tyres and drop them really low. You can go comfortably down to 16 and you won't probably have a problem at all. A lift kit is always nice just because it keeps your belly out of the sand, but definitely not an essential. And lastly, I'd recommend a low range box. Just for those inland tracks to make your transmission just work that little bit less. So what's there to do on the middle road tracks? Look, there is a few lakes and walking tracks that spear off from them, and they're definitely worth checking out. I would spend a bit of time on Moreton Island, but those tracks are essential to get across and they're a lot of fun. Hope you've enjoyed this update to my favourite tracks. Again, I'm going to keep these videos coming out as we tackle more spots. We've got a lot more trips planned up in Cape York again, the Northern Territory, and a whole bunch of spots around there. So super keen to keep sharing these tracks with you, and I'll keep them coming. Cheers. Thanks for tuning in to Ranger Touring.